Well, g'day. Uh, I'm Michael Donaldson, editor of Pursuit of Hoppiness, and I'm here with Chris Mills from Kereru Brewing in Upper Hutt. G'day, Chris.
Good evening, Michael. How are you going?
Oh, beautiful this evening. Yeah, it stopped raining in
Okay,
Auckland and
good.
it's lovely.
Oh,
How are
we've
you?
had a bit of, oh, it's great. We've had a bit of sun down here as well today. It's almost feeling like it could be pretending to be spring.
Well, ironically, we're going to be drinking some, I guess, wintry beers, but you know,
Hmm.
stouts for all seasons, I think. Um,
Oh, yes.
yes. So tonight we are doing a vertical tasting of Night Spirit. And I'll just show the people watching what we've got, first of all. So this is Night Spirit.
Hmm.
And they're lovingly labeled with limited edition. What do you call these things that go over the top?
Oh, I think we're neck labels is what we're calling them.
Neck
But
labels. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's a collector's item, and it's going to be a shame to open it, but we will. And so I've got the 2018, oh, that's the 2020, and the 2019. It's hard to see
19.
these in reverse. And if you couldn't quite catch the writing on it, we are having a New Zealand barrel-aged Imperial Stout, which has got the shiny top 30 sticker from the New World Awards earlier this year.
Oh, that was a nice one to achieve as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Did you get a few people discovering you through that?
I think they did. There were some new followers of the beer that showed up off of that. It's been a really good push to gain some exposure with that, and
Yeah,
really,
great.
really appreciate what Foodstuffs has brought with that as a bit of a marketing campaign.
Nice. We'll charge them some advertising after this. So the question is, Chris, when you're doing a vertical tasting of a beer, and I guess this applies to a wine, and I couldn't quite work it out. Do we start with the oldest and work our way to the youngest, or vice versa?
I'm a bit unsure as well, and I'm quite open to your thoughts on that. And I have no idea what we're going to expect. I haven't tried a Night Spirit in quite some time. It's probably been a few months.
Okay.
So I have my recollections and familiarities with it, but I don't know what to expect tonight.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would suggest we should start newest and work our way back through time.
Yeah, I mean, that was my gut feeling, because you're sort of seeing how time affects it.
Yeah.
From what the fresher batch. And so tell me, okay, well, I'll crack a top off my 2020.
I'll do the same.
I mean, so first of all, I mean, it just looks fantastic. I mean, I've got a bit of sort of light behind me and it's hard to see, but gloriously frothy head, deep, dark obsidian black. You cannot see through that. Yeah, and it just looks rich and very appealing and fresh. It looks lively to me in the glass.
Now, fresh and new are going to be some interesting words to apply to this, because it's spent quite a while in an oak barrel.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my first question. What's the process for this? How long ago was it created?
I think this was originally fermented probably in 2018.
Right.
And was decanted after ferment, and was relatively still, and would have been racked into special wet, freshly received New Zealand Whiskey Collection single malt casks that previously had held red wine. No, these are the bourbon barrels. These aren't the red wine ones.
Okay.
So there should not be any red wine notes coming through on it.
No.
It'll just be, well, let's find out.
Well, I mean, straight up, there's
so it's
lots of there's an oaky note straight away.
I think these barrels are very oak forward.
And a little bit of kind of cold coffee, and
I also get a little bit of slight sort of autolysis from yeast, so slight
Marmite.
savory note that comes through. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a sort of a Marmite, which is, I really like that character
Mm.
in a beer. Doesn't sound right, but
Oh, it has its place.
well, I mean, first up, it's so smooth. It's really.
By the way, cheers to you, sir.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Indeed.
For those still with us, this all came about because I was boasting to Chris, I think, that I now had a 2018, a 2019, and 2020, and I think possibly my joy was that I had managed to save them for so long. So it was like, well, he had the same, so well, let's go and taste them. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
I like the alliteration of a virtual vertical for a tasting.
Exactly. So yeah, this is I find it incredibly smooth on the palate. Like, it doesn't come at you with any big boozy notes. They're well integrated. There's not a lot of heat. More just lovely warmth.
There is definitely there's a little warmth in it, though. I like the sweetness that's coming through, sort of mixed with the dark roasty notes that are in there.
Yep. Now, it's really well balanced, Chris. I think that's and there's no edges, like there's nothing that kind of jars or catches, and that's always a good sign, I think.
One of the other things that I really appreciate about this is that it's a fairly lengthy mouth feel experience, so it's got an evolution of taste from the first sort of sharp, roasty, slightly acrid notes that come through, followed by sweetness, and then that sort of gentle rolling, sort of roasty, oaky.
Yep.
It just evolves.
Yeah. Sort of down the back of the palate, there's just a little bit of warmth again from the alcohol, a little bit of tannin, but definitely like a taste of raisins.
Yes.
Which is really nice. It's like you've squished a raisin on the roof of your mouth, and
yes. I'm just double checking because that raisiny aspect is sometimes something that I would associate with the red wine casks.
Okay.
Being something sort of red fruits and dried fruits.
Yeah.
But it's not as it is that sort of sun-dried sultana sort of experience. And it's just really yummy.
Yeah, it is really yummy. And I think what ABV are we at this? It's 12%, is it? Or is the 2020?
Well, no, 12 and a half.
12 and a half, yeah. They've jumped up as they've got older. Well, they jump around a little bit, actually. 2018's 12, 2019's 11 and a half, and then 2020's 12 and a half, yeah.
So the base beer comes through pretty regularly, sitting at 10.2%. And that additional alcohol is going to be residual whiskey that's left behind in the oak.
Right. Do you get some extra fermentation going on in the barrel, or they're all clean?
No, it'll just be alcohol that's soaked into the timber and possibly even sloshing around in the bottom of the cask that adulterates, spikes, flavors, enhances the beer while it's in there. So, and this is one of the things about the way we age the beer in the casks. It's in there for a long time. Basically, I've decided, let's get all the flavor possible from these casks. So it's not a short resting time. It's months and months and months and more than a year. And in the case of some of the beers that are still in casks, just over 2 years. And now I'm starting to feel a bit antsy, and I want to get it out of there because I don't want it to be overly oaky.
Yeah. No, that's because that would throw the balance out, and I think that's what I was. Everything in this is really well integrated. It's a really lovely. You first thought as an after dinner kind of beer, but I actually had one of these during the year with quite a hearty kind of spicy curry, like not super spicy, like more of an Indian kind of curry. but with mellow spices, and it went really well with it. Like, it stood up to it first of all, and that sweetness worked well, I think.
That sort of reminds me, I think it sort of would sit in the same place that a really crunchy Syrah might occupy if you were having a lovely Rogan Josh that has all the spices that you're hoping for, but without too much heat. And I think it would have a nice place. And that's even though I've just had my dinner, I'm suddenly thinking, "Ooh, I wouldn't mind trying that at some point."
Yeah,
so,
no,
good idea.
Yeah, I think it was just a happy coincidence. But yeah, loved it. I mean, we were talking about cheese matching. I think both of us have eaten, but
I have a little cheese board next to me.
Yeah, I've got some here as well. But what, so you're doing it after dinner. What sort of cheese are you going to pair with something like this?
Well, since I know this one doesn't have any smoke in it, I do have a smoked cheese as part of my lineup. I have a Maasdam that I think might go well with this.
Right.
So a little bit nutty. Yes, in fact, that very one.
I followed your lead. Yes.
Excellent. Cheers. I was realizing I'd left the packages upstairs. So that's the cheese that I would have picked, and I'll let you know what I think of it. But pardon the chewing if that comes through. It's pleasantly nutty and quite smooth. And if anything, it actually makes the beer taste a little bit sweeter.
Okay, interesting.
So, and accentuates. It's a very nice. If you have some there, I do recommend trying it as a.
I don't wish to vacate my seat and leave the screen blank. And I'm no good at editing, so we're just going to have to roll with the. If I get up, I will. But
you don't know me.
Yeah, you'll have to entertain people.
It's a nice. Oh, that's fine. I can do that, but it's a good combo. It's not one that I was sure about because that sort of Swiss cheese sort of flavor wasn't quite sure. But again, I'm quite happy just to try things and see what they're like, and I would do that again. Yeah,
excellent. Well, I think because we're going to try and stick to a time frame. We should move on to the 2019. One thing, Chris, because these are big beers, and I think the last time I opened one, I spread it basically over 2 or 3 nights, and it didn't lose anything from being open.
No,
but what would you say to people about they've opened it, they've had a glass? What would you do? I've got one of these.
Does work, but if you've been reasonably clever with not deforming the cap over much, you can just pop it back on.
Yep.
And that'll do the job for what it needs to do, and tomorrow it'll still present well.
Yeah. It it's not heavily carbonated, first of all, so it's not going to lose anything from that. Yeah. Do you sorry, while we swap glasses and bottles, just coming back to the barrel aging, does you get a bit of alcohol boost from evaporation?
I would think we'd lose more alcohol through evaporation than we'd gain through the loss of liquid. I'd say that it probably might have been stronger when it first went in the barrel and might have actually lost a little bit.
Right.
But,
Okay.
So I've opened my 2019.
Yes, I've got mine here as well.
And try to give you a nice, without pouring it on my keyboard.
Well, I gave it a bit of a slam pour to get that nice head going again. The only thing I would say in terms of how it presents, it looks nearly identical, but to me the head's not quite as tight, and just a little dull sheen where it was a bit more kind of glossy black, the last one. It looks older, just a tad. don't know.
Slow down a little there, Mike. No, I would agree with you there. It's a little lackluster in that, and to me that would be something I would expect with a beer that's getting older.
Mm, mm.
So,
but the aroma's still there, really good, rich.
A little different character. I'm getting a slight sort of almost a berry fruit note class.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
less
hints of
savory.
cherries.
Yeah.
Mm.
Whereas the first one, that Marmite-y kind of character and the tannin character were quite dominant. They sort of fall back a little bit here, and yeah, it is more fruit driven. Yeah. Wow. That is a better drinking experience than the other one for a year's age on it. So yeah, remarkable, really. It's smoother, tighter almost. Yeah,
I would agree with that. I do get a slightly more tannic finish on the tongue from it.
Yeah, a little burny kind of
woody.
tannin. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's yeah. Well, this was
happy with that.
Yeah, this was the vintage, by the way, that won the New World Award, the top 30. So even though that was this year, it was last year's vintage. So
yes,
and yeah, I can see why. It's absolutely delicious, and it's remarkable to think that I didn't think there would be such a dramatic difference 1 year's worth of age, but it's quite noticeable.
I mean, the other thing is that I've been somewhat haphazard with the use of the barrels. So we've filled what we've had as they've arrived. And I've since learnt from various people that have come to the brewery to tell me stories about our casks because they recognize them. Some of the barrels have yellow paint and some have white and some have blue and white. And each of those tells you a different story about what was in the casks.
Okay.
In terms of I think single malt versus unmalted barley versus various options, and that to me tells me right there that the different barrels are going to have different expressions that come through. We've certainly tasted each of the barrels as we've taken the beer out, but it's not something really that helps because we're going to blend it all together. I'm not going to take single casks and bottle them independently because it's beer. It's not.
It's not whiskey or single block wine or something. I do the woody note that is in here is it's almost like driftwoody kind of like a minerality kind of quality to it. It's so, and there's a little chocolatey character that the other one you couldn't really pick in the other one. So
yeah, and I'm fascinated as to where that's coming from. I do remember some of the casks did taste slightly chocolatey.
Okay.
And I also learned that if they had a letter P painted on one end with a circle with 4 broken segments, that tells us that there was a peated whiskey in that barrel.
Oh, okay.
I don't think that either of the ones we've tried so far have any peat.
Okay.
Be contributed.
Because that would be that driftwoody thing you might get from a peated.
And that could well be. So now you're planting ideas in my head, and I'm just trying to decide. I have a friend in Australia whose superpower is to be able to detect peat.
Okay.
Mainly because he really dislikes it.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if the 19 was one that he's tried that he's mentioned that too.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
I think the 18 may have some in it.
Well, we will find that out in short time. But that is all I can say is, can people still buy these, by the way?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I can't make more because the
It is,
2020 is the last of the use of the barrels, and I could find other whiskey barrels, but it wouldn't be this.
yeah.
This
Okay.
is the New Zealand Whiskey Collection. This is the old Wilson's Distillery stock. It's very unique and specific to what it is.
Yeah.
Um, I do have a supply. Certain lines there's less of. So some of the barley wines, the remaining stock is numbered in the tens of bottles.
Okay.
For these, though, there's a pretty decent supply, and anybody who's interested in them, they're available from our website and from a number of different bottle shops and New Worlds around New Zealand.
Yeah. I
That
mean,
support them.
they're not cheap.
No.
We have to be upfront about that. What would that retail for? Yeah.
Typically, these are $26, $27. Sometimes they go on special down as low as 23.
Okay.
When I get down to the end of the line, I'd probably push the price up a little bit just to
Yeah.
continue to enjoy them for a little longer. But ultimately, I made these so I could sell them.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you were prepared to pay $20 for a bottle of great wine, you're kind of getting the same experience. Like, you would only have a hand, glasses like this, and share it amongst 4 or 5 people in an evening, or spread it over 2 or 3 nights. You'd get really good value from it.
You certainly would. You get an entirely different sort of value if you have the whole thing to yourself. But yeah,
the value of a deep sleep.
Indeed, but it is meant to be shared, and that would be my hope and my intention behind them, is that they're a sharing beer.
Yeah. Look, and if people are watching this and thinking about it, I thoroughly recommend getting a bunch of people around and pulling out something like this. It's a real treat for the end of an evening. I don't know anyone that I've ever shared this with who hasn't, whichever vintage, hasn't loved it. So yeah, it's a great
on that
experience.
note, it's a good cheese board cheese, or if you had a steamed pudding, or if you had or a Christmas cake, or all of the above, if you were really pushing the boat out. But this is a bit of mainland epicure that I think would go well with this and I'll tell you what I think of it.
I couldn't find the mainland epicure, but I got this aged cheddar, which I think I can open here. I'll leave you to entertain the people for a second, Chris.
Sure. So this is a very sharp cheddar. It's got those little tiny crystalline inclusions in it.
So Chris is just frozen there.
What's the beer like?
I think you just had some internet drop out there, Chris. Your screen's frozen, so I'll wait for you to come back. But I can say an aged cheddar goes extremely well. I'm now going to have to entertain you on my own until Chris comes back, or do some nifty editing.
So we were there a moment ago, and I was tasting this, but my internet decided to reset itself as I was having a swallow of things, and
That's right. It was good. Good dramatic tension.
What's happened to him? So Epicure and the 19, not as interesting a combination as the 20 with the Maasdam. So there's a little bit of almost a fusel note that comes through with the cheese, sort of masking certain flavors that are in there, where that fruitiness goes more bitter cherry and almost almond-like.
Okay.
It's not unpleasant, but it's not as impressive as the previous beer.
Okay. Yeah, with the cheese, yeah.
But the beer itself is fantastic on its own.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. But yeah, I would struggle to drink, in an evening more than what we're going to have now, which is, three little pours. That's enough.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So
Is that a hint that it's time to move on,
it
go
is,
back in time a little bit?
yeah, the 2018. So again, the head's definitely sort of darker and not as, to me, not as frothy and bright and lively. The colour's not too different from the 19. It's got a little bit of a sheen to it. It, it looks a little aged, but it's not overly. Doesn't look tired. Like it's not an old man by any stretch.
Now, considering this was probably fermented in it's maybe 2016. I'd have to go look at my records, but it's not a new beer.
No.
The aroma is quite different from the previous two.
Yeah, I'm struggling with it a little bit.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say almost like a lanolin wet sheep kind of
I was gonna go leathery.
leathery, yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Now that you've said
I
it,
think
yeah.
that this will be the one that has a bit of peat in it.
Yeah, you have to sort of fetch the aroma a little bit on this one, whereas the other two, it jumped out a little bit more. So yeah, it's a bit more embedded.
In the mouth, it's very oaky.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite dry as well. Like it doesn't have the same depth of sweetness that the other two had. But the flavour is really good still, different.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, what's amazing, it's the same base beer in all three, and it's the casks that have done this. So
yeah.
Some of the New Zealand whiskey collection whiskeys I find are very oaky though, and the beer is no different.
This does feel. Did you say it had some peat? Do you think?
I think it does have some peat.
Yeah, it's got that. Like you've put a little nip of Rex attitude in there. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Sort of medicinal, almost a little bit of heat. But the overall, quite a creamy kind of mouthfeel. It's
Yep, not chocolatey like some of the others. I keep having it's a very oaky finish that I get with every sip, but on repeated mouthfuls, I'm finding it grows on me. So I do. Do you like peaty whiskeys, Michael?
Yeah, I do. I like
so quite often I find that if they've aged a little bit, they're more pleasant. So if they've been open for hours or months even, they get a bit more integrated and round, and this sort of feels like it's the very tail end of something like that.
Yeah. Look, it's
almost I'm trying to decide if it's almost tasting a little bit tired in the whiskey department, but the beer flavors are still quite pleasant and approachable.
It's really gentle, quite complex. There's a lot going on in this one, but it doesn't feel aged at all. There's nothing that kind of sags or lags. Still quite tightly structured, but it's dancing this fine line where if you had a really heavy Shiraz that was really heavy on sort of cigar boxy and a bit of cherry and stuff, it's not that far removed from it in a kind of weird way. It's quite vinous, I'm finding.
I think you could probably put these into very similar places in terms of where you drink them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, would we have a larger goblet
Yeah.
possibly to try?
Mm,
And
yeah. I do think this would do the job of a red wine. You'd pair it with the same kind of foods that pair a really rich red wine with, and it's very low carbonation. Like it's quite slick on
yeah.
the palate.
I've almost got a hint of coconut coming through late in it as well, which I associate with sort of the tannins and oakiness.
Mm, mm. It's
And I think,
you know it's a really good drinking experience, and it's just again
mm,
so different, like quite remarkable. Yeah, I, I might even say it's my favorite in a bizarre way.
mm.
So,
Oh, it's got character in a way that the other two are
yeah.
just sort of gentle and friendly, and this is just maybe a touch more edgy.
Mm, mm. Yeah, no,
Mm.
it's good. It's got something to it for sure.
Mm.
Yeah, they have all got different personalities. They're like siblings, I guess. Um,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, they are very much so.
Mm,
And each of the seasons that these have been in, I mean, I don't have the weather records to be able to tell you what happened in the brewery, but we could go figure out and make up the story that goes with it, where
yeah,
a particularly hot summer might extract more tannins
right.
than a cooler one.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I mean, the whole it's a very organic process. So there are going to be all those factors that come into play.
yep.
Um, yeah. Hey, oh, it's remarkable and enjoyable. And we spent so much time talking about the beer. I forgot to ask you about the room that you're sitting in with
Oh,
its
yes,
kind of slightly interesting color scheme. But I understand you are sitting in what was the original Kereru brewery.
that's correct. Special painted ceiling so that we can wipe it down, and linoleum tiled floor with coving all the way around. And there's, to my right, there's a sink.
Yeah.
Yes, this was the original brewery where we got started back in 2010 and 2011, brewing under the house, originally in an old Farah. Well, then it was brand new, and it was, I think I had one of the fifth unit that Farah made of their
Wow.
three
The
vessel.
three-tiered gravity bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
And I felt a bit mad having open burners inside the house with that. So what you can't see above my head is a big stainless hood, and there's a very powerful ex-police comms fan as an
Right.
extractor, where I spent a huge amount of time trying to work out how many times I'd have to turn the air over in here so as
Mm.
not to cause it to be
Asphyxiate you.
toxic from
Yeah.
carbon monoxide. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. My
but
God.
yeah.
I mean, I have done a little bit of home brewing indoors when the weather
Hmm.
has. Normally, I do it outside, but if the weather's forced me inside, but it's always windows and doors open and next to windows and
Yes.
doors. But yeah, yeah. So anyone home
The
brewing and listening, do not put your gas burner on inside.
No, not unless you can do at least 30 air changes per hour and
Okay.
have a handy fire extinguisher
Yeah.
and don't have anything flammable nearby.
Yeah. Did you have any accidents in there?
Not with fire, but I'd certainly had a couple trips to the A&E where I accidentally poured hot, scalding wort
God.
on myself, and that was
Yes.
not good.
No.
It sort of brings to mind that there are two kinds of brewers: the ones who have been burnt and the ones who have yet to be burnt. And my goal with all our staff at Kereru is to make sure that they remain in that second latter category.
Very good.
So,
So
yeah,
far, so good.
yes.
Yeah.
A little bit of smoked cheddar with this brings out the
Uh,
sweetness in the beer.
okay. I've got some. I couldn't find. You had the Barry Bay one, I think, but
Yes,
I think your
but
local supermarket's better than mine. But
oh, I'd be surprised at that, but we just have different selections.
mm, we did try to match up. Well, I tried to match
Mm,
what Chris was doing, but
well, I did sort of haphazardly just go buy cheeses that I like the look of and hoped you'd be able to find something like them.
okay, that is very smoky cheese. So
Mm.
Oh, that's lovely.
Mhm.
That's really good. Smoked cheese and the 2018 Night Spirit. That's the way
That's
to
a
go.
good combo.
Mm, most
Deserves to
excellent.
be repeated.
I might do it again tomorrow night.
Yeah.
But,
Well,
oh, very good.
so yeah, and one thing I do have here, which I didn't have a second one to be able to send off to you, but the
High Wheeler, yeah,
so this is a single wood aged New Zealand whiskey.
right.
So this is a little tiny, that's 100 ml bottle that I had managed to get from the New Zealand Whiskey Collection about a year ago.
Okay.
And this would be a good representative example of the beer, the whiskey that's in the beer.
Okay.
So if someone were able to get their hands on something like this, it's very clean.
Yeah.
Has some oaky notes in it, but it's really, really lovely.
Okay.
If you were struggling to find a New Zealand equivalent, but managed to go and find something from Scotland, I wouldn't go with an Isle of whiskey or maybe even Speyside, but a nice clean. Oh, I think the Ben Romac Organic
Okay.
is a particular
And would you
single malt that I've had.
match the whiskey with the beer? Yeah.
Yes, very much
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
I really like Boilermakers and enjoy finding out which beers go well with which whiskeys and
Mm.
IPAs, single malts. It's a lot of fun to go and sort of go on a little flavor journey with those.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That'll be another trip, another time, I think.
Yes.
Excellent. What was we? I'm going to disappear for one more second. There was one more thing to talk about.
So while Michael's gone, I just wanted to point out that whilst the labels on the Night Spirit bottles all look very similar, there are some subtle differences. So there's different color shifts and changes. So that the Purity moth that features on them is stylized by Natasha. They are each subtly different for their color, and in some cases, the different swirly patterns and details.
Okay. Well, that is interesting. Yeah, you actually up close, you can see different colours in the wings, and that's really clever. Yeah, and one of the ones has got a darker pattern going through it. Yeah, that's really good. Nice little touches. I did. It's really hard for me to show this, but in the dying light here in Auckland, but this is the
Ahaha.
Kereru Advent calendar, and it is designed for you to have the 24 beers of Christmas. It's a lucky dip, really, isn't it? You just follow the numbers, and
But you and everyone else that has one, if you follow the numbers, should have the same beer on each day.
oh, okay.
So, yep. So we haven't just randomly chucked them together, and we're really looking forward to. We've got a whole bunch of content that we're preparing to let loose on our website with beer recipes and matches, and hoping that we will get the public to interact and share their photos and their food pairing suggestions, and
Okay.
basically make a nice collaborative and enjoyable experience for all of us.
Oh, great. Yeah. No, it's a great idea. There's a few people doing them now, but you were the first ones, I think, who did this from memory.
Yes, I think this is our 6th year releasing them.
Mm.
We've gotten a bit smarter about how to make them in terms of ways to do them that aren't quite so labor intensive, but
Yeah.
the first year involved a lot of hot glue and was quite exciting. But I think what we have now is a lot of fun, and this year's has no repeats and only one sour. We found that
Okay.
the general tasting public would prefer to have dark beers and malty beers and IPAs.
Okay.
But we had to put a Feijoa Weiss in there, so
Good.
it's
Good.
just
Yeah.
too good not to include.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if anything's become a signature beer for Kereru, it's possibly this Night Spirit. Do you think?
Yeah.
But your Feijoa Weiss has sort of won heaps of awards as well.
It has. I think we do dark beers. I think we do sour beers. We are a little less known for our IPAs, but I
Mm,
think we're certainly turning out some really, really tasty ones. Emma and Jesse have been bringing some great beers forward, and Alex before them with his Resonator recipe for us.
mm,
Um, I think there's some really well appreciated beers that we make.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And did you, in your basement where your downstairs room, was Moonless Stout your first beer? Is that right?
It was one of the very first beers.
Right.
So I think historically, Silverstream Pale Ale and Hop to It were the original. In fact, it all started as one beer, then became two. One became hoppier and a little stronger, and
Right.
the other a little lighter. And Moonless appeared shortly after that. And the Moonless Stout recipe hasn't changed since it was first made under the house. And in fact, Night Spirit is a doubled up grain bill for Moonless Stout.
Oh,
And
okay. Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I
Did
think
not
one
know
of the
that.
things that's made it what it is we went to Gabby and Doug Michaels at Gladfield and asked them for roasted barley before they had one. And
Okay. Yeah.
that is probably the most significant ingredient that makes our stouts what they are.
Great.
Really
Yeah.
phenomenally well malted specialty malts from Gladfield.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
The roasted barley is essential.
Mm.
I think in those, from my understanding anyway. I haven't made many stouts myself, but yeah. So the I'm sitting here thinking that the light is fading and I'm starting to look a bit grainy. But still daylight outside, but it feels a bit dark in here.
Mhm.
Look, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. In the very first video of old bearded men talking about beer. I don't know if we'll call it that, the series, but it's been a real pleasure.
No, it's nice to share a bit of the evening with you. I really appreciate it, and thanks for making it happen.
Yeah, brilliant. So that's Chris Mills from Kereru, and we've been doing a vertical tasting of Night Spirit virtually, and it was great fun. So I thoroughly recommend if you can get your hands on one of these beers and give it a go. And if you can get all three, all better. All right. Are there any more going
Fantastic.
back past 2018?
There was a 2017, but it was a tiny release, and with the exception of maybe a dozen bottles that I'm rather jealously hoarding, that's it.
All right. Brilliant. Hey, thanks so much, Chris. Take care and stay unburned.
Thank you.
Cheers. Good
Cheers,
night.
Michael. Have a lovely evening. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.